I must say, you all know, I think, how much I love to deliver sermons. It's one thing that sort of energizes, it animates my week. I think about, I sort of culminate everything I've been thinking about over the past week. I start studying the Torah portion with that in mind and see what connects where. And I hopefully deliver it in a way that connects those dots, at least the way I see them, and hopefully that you all take some meaning out of that. This week was, I think, a bit unique because when I opened the Chumash, when I opened to read Parshat Ki Teitzei, I had in mind already everything that's been going on in Israel. Again, this 700th day of the hostages still being in captivity was hitting me hard because I won't give the shtick. I believe deeply in numerology, but 700 is a really powerful number. 700 is the number seven is a number that is like a completion, a time when everything should come full circle, and it just hasn't yet. And that kind of hit me pretty hard. And then I open up the parsha and I read the first line, Ki teitzei lamilchama al oivecha, when you go to war with your enemy. And I said, oh, this is a little too close to what I've been thinking about. And then I read on and it says, Unetano Adonai Elohecha biyadecha. And God gives the enemies, gives them into your hand. God grants you success. And then it goes on to talk about all these ethical laws and all these things. And it seems that a lot there in the middle was missing, right? When you go out to war, and then once you're done with war, and then it almost glosses over everything that happens in the middle, all the pain, all of the anxiety, all the fear that happens in the middle. It's just glossed over. That very first line. So where do we find our space when the line just goes from the beginning of the war to the end of the war, and then spends pages and pages talking about ethics? And so it was tough for me. And I read a lot of commentaries, because what do our commentaries do? What are they there for but to fill in the blanks? A lot of midrash talking about, well, this could be, it's a war, but it could also be looked at as when you go out to war with your enemy. Who's your enemy? Perhaps it's an internal war, and that connects to Elul, right? Because we're always fighting against like negative forces inside of ourselves, and we're praying that God, helps us in that fight. And that's through the lens of ethics, right? How we act in this world is really fighting against this enemy that's internal, but there is not an internal enemy. I can't focus on that right now because of what is going on. So focused on this external enemy. And then I thought more about it. And I thought that perhaps it glosses over it because it's supposed to be stark. Because it's supposed to, sometimes when something is omitted, there's a power in that because you think, hey, why is that omitted? And you think more about it. But one thing I was thinking about is that it goes from the beginning of the war to the successful end of the war as almost as if it's a given. Almost as if it's a given. And that we have faith that it will turn out okay. Let's think about the future. Everything will be fine there. And now let's think about the future. How are we going to act afterward? How are we going to rebuild society? How are we going to lay the foundations once again of a society after war? That is what maybe we should be looking at with the faith, the tikvah, that it will end successfully. And let's have that deep faith that we can start thinking about the day after, instead of being bogged down into what is going on. And so perhaps it's about the journey, and that is what sort of makes us grow. And this has been happening throughout the generations, throughout our peoplehood, that we have gone out to war with an enemy, whatever that enemy looked like, whether it was in the Middle Ages in Europe, whether it was in Egypt back in ancient times, whether it was the Canaanites that the Torah was talking about, whatever it was, we were always confronted somehow with this enemy. And it seems that after it, we got a bit better. We grew. We'll see in next week's Parsha and the Parshas ahead that God says that this world to the Jewish people, and it's not really a blessing. In fact, it's amongst the curses that we'll be wandering around, and that the world will almost be like this crucible that is sort of like grinding us down to get to this beautiful, pure product. And it's like, well, who wants that? But you have the old colloquialism, what doesn't kill us make us stronger. And then I was looking more, I was reading more, and I went through my social media feed, and I read this post that was, it just struck me as if it was Rashi or a Rambam or an Ibn Ezra, like a commentary on the Torah. And it's from this person. It was reposted from this person named Carl Ginsberg, and I tried to look up this person, and I couldn't find really who he was, and it was this mystery. But his words were so stark that I just wanted to share them. He wrote a letter to anti-Semites. And he said, "To the anti-Semites of the world, you say we run the banks. You say we control Hollywood. You say we dominate the media. You say we have too much influence, too much power, too much pride. But you never ask how or why. So let me tell you. We were banned from owning land, so we learned to live by our minds. We were blocked from trade guilds and professions, so we became merchants, scholars, doctors, and lawyers. Our commitment to education didn't come from privilege, it came from necessity, from exclusion, from survival. When we were barred from universities, we built our own yeshivot. The Torah became our moral anchor, the Talmud, our intellectual training ground. When we were mocked for being bookish, we made knowledge our defense. The insult became our armor. In medieval Europe, Christians were forbidden by the church to lend money with interest, but kings still needed loans, and someone had to do the collecting. So they turned to the Jews. Already despised, already othered, we became moneylenders, not by ambition, but by force. Then we were hated for it. In America, we were shut out of respectable jobs, so we went west and helped invent Hollywood. Not to brainwash, but to dream, to tell stories, to make magic. When Ivy League schools capped Jewish admissions, we founded Brandeis. When hospitals wouldn't hire Jewish doctors, we built Cedars-Sinai. We weren't trying to dominate, we were just trying to live. We were expelled from Spain, massacred in Poland, hanged in Iran, lynched in Georgia, bombed in Germany, and yet we survived. We learned, we remembered. In 1948, the world watched as nearly 1 million Jews were expelled or fled from Arab lands. Their homes, businesses, and synagogues were seized or burned. There were no refugee camps, no UN agencies, no worldwide calls for justice, no right of return for the Jews of Baghdad, Aleppo, or Tripoli. You say we're tribal, but we tried to integrate. We changed our names, straightened our curls, abandoned our faith. But every time we tried to disappear, you reminded us who we were. So we turned inward. We leaned on each other. We built synagogues when your houses of worship were closed to us. We built hospitals when we weren't welcomed in yours. We built advocacy groups to defend ourselves when no one else would. And when no country would have us, we built our own. Then came October 7th, 2023. You say you hate Israel because of its policies, because of land, because of borders. But on October 7th, 2023, Hamas didn't target soldiers. They didn't storm checkpoints, military outposts. They raped women. They beheaded babies. They burned families alive. They slaughtered civilians in their homes, bombed shelters, and slaughtered young people at a music festival. It was the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust. And as our dead lay unburied, the world didn't mourn with us, it rallied against us. College students held "Glory to the Martyrs" signs. Protesters waved swastikas in Sydney. "Gas the Jews" was graffitied in Berlin. Jewish students were barricaded inside libraries in New York. MIT students were blocked from class. At Harvard, they were told to remove their Stars of David for safety. All while our hostages were still bleeding in tunnels. So no, it isn't about borders. You hated us before 1948, before the state of Israel existed, before a single border was drawn. What you hate is that the Jew now has power, a flag, a standing army, a government, a home. You preferred us weak, wandering, apologizing, dependent on your pity or permission to live. Israel is not a gift, it is a necessity. We didn't colonize the land, we returned to it. Jews have lived in Jerusalem, in Hebron, in Tzfat, and in Tiberias, Tiberia for over 3,000 years. We prayed toward Zion for centuries. We spoke Hebrew while the world told us to forget. We made the desert bloom. We drained swamps, planted forests, revived a lost language. We welcomed Holocaust survivors, Russian refuseniks, and Ethiopian Jews airlifted from famine. We built a nation while surrounded by enemies, embargoed by the world, and haunted by the ashes of Auschwitz. Israel was not built because of the Holocaust. It was built because of 2,000 years of exile, genocide, and betrayal. And it is the only insurance policy against the next one. Never again is not a slogan. It is the Iron Dome. It's the F-35. It's the 18-year-old girl in olive green standing guard so toddlers in Sderot can sleep. Why the double standard? When Russia invaded Ukraine, the world cried out. Blue and yellow flags adorned every profile. But when Hamas burned Israeli children alive, we were told to de-escalate. When we defend our cities, we're called monsters. When we bury our dead, you protest our grief. Why? Peace is possible. We've tried. You say Jews are foreigners in the Middle East, but the UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, and Sudan disagree. The Abraham Accords proved peace isn't just possible, it's real. Israel sends aid to Syrian earthquake victims. Arab doctors and lawmakers serve in the Israeli Knesset. We seek coexistence. You chant from the river to the sea. We choose life. You chant death. So yes, Israel is strong now, Baruch Hashem, because a powerless Jew is a dead Jew. And history taught us no king, no pope, no president will save us. We don't want to dominate. We just want to live freely, proudly, unapologetically. You don't have to like us. You don't have to agree with us, but never again will you decide whether we're allowed to exist.
Oh, yes, sure.
Yeah. It's a powerful letter. Ki tetzei lamilchama al oivecha. When you go out to war with your enemy, has so many different meanings. Our enemy right now, unfortunately, is external. We go into the high holidays, however, and the rabbis teach us to direct our thoughts somehow internally. How are we feeling now? What are we feeling now? How do we see ourselves in the long span of Jewish history? Do we have hope? Do we have, so rabbis say, bitachon? Bitachon is, in modern Hebrew, means security. It's the security guards are called bitachon. Security, meaning that you are just sure, betach, surely, we know that we're going to be successful as we have throughout the past. But where are we? Where are we feeling? We can't allow the outside to dictate our feelings. It's hard these days when we see things coming at us, people's opinions, pundits, social media feeds, everything coming at us, telling us how we should feel or how we should think. But they are localized. We are a people who've existed for thousands of years. Where do we fit in that? How are we feeling now? The high holidays are a chance for us to check in with ourselves, to ignore the noise, and really try and understand who we are, where we are, and do we have the hope that our ancestors always carried with them? And if not, how do we get that back? Maybe reading posts like this, it helped me a little bit. That's why I read it for you this morning. But let's look for things that reinvigorate that hope, reinstill that hope, because the hope is a constant. Our faith in it is not. Let's try and get back to that hope, that tikva. That is why the Israeli national anthem is Hatikva. It's the foundation of our belief. It's the foundation of our people. Let's check in with our own hope this Shabbat and the few weeks leading to the high holidays. Shabbat Shalom. We've got a lot of reflection to do.